Hi, well, me and Drew are going to be leading off on this, but do chip in as we go through. It's going to be some slides, a little bit about maps interactively, stuff from different places, but also focus on what Harry is doing. Probably take us a bit too long to go around and introduce everyone, so excuse us on that. So what we're covering is, well, why bother with mapping? Is it some geeking activity, or is it just for how do you get from here to there, or how can it actually be useful in a community? What are the different sorts of maps? What's actually happening in Colville, hands-on? Some examples from Islington. I actually live in central London and have been doing some stuff locally there. Drew's going to talk about mapping, about connections, and a bit about a game that we developed for a fictitious place called Slipham. The difficulty about sharing case studies and so on is people say, yeah, well, it's interesting, but that's not like our place. So we invented another place that everybody could join into. We may have time for a bit of chat about that. In one of the great sessions we've been having with the Colville crew, we asked people, how can I use maps? And they came up with some great ideas. So understanding the community, identifying places, connecting, presenting data, obviously finding routes, engaging with people, linking up to resources. And on linking up to resources, if you're doing some asset-based community development and you're identifying through possibly the bingo method that Dina touched on, what are the special places, the people, the buildings, the activities in the area? How do you record all of that? Well, mapping is a good way of doing that. So maps are, as I think will become clear as we talk through that, maps aren't enough on their own. You need maps in order to collect data, geographic and network maps, which we'll talk about. But having got the maps, particularly for network maps, which might show who's connected to who, you need to help people communicate with each other. And also, if you're working as a mapping team, you need to be able to communicate internally well. So do use email or WhatsApp or Google Docs or whatever. You need to be able to use different sorts of media, text, images, audio, video, and people need to develop new skills and take on responsibilities. And it's obviously a development process to create maps, and it's partly a bit of dive in and start doing it so you get an idea of what's possible, but also stepping back and saying, why are we doing this? Revisiting those post-it notes and avoiding just developing maps because you get a little bit excited about the tools. And forever reminding ourselves that maps can show you the way, but they don't actually make the journey for you. So geographic map you'll be fairly familiar with. Google Maps, and you can use Google to create your own map. Some of you may have done that. And the components of geographic location-based maps are a marker, which will probably have a name associated with it, may have a different sort of icon showing whether it's a church or a park or whatever. It might have an image that pops up when you click on the marker. You might be able to play some video or some audio, and you can create routes, and Harry will be talking more about this as well. So good cue there for Harry to dive in. We only met a few weeks ago, but Harry's really picked up on developing maps. So if I stop my share, can you pick up?
Well, can you all I really need to show is really what you have on the screen right there.
Oh,
So
okay. You're
if you
not
could
going to do it
actually see it
interactively.
on that, that'd be
Fine.
fine.
Okay, cool. So I'll just leave it and you'll talk about it.
Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, I'm Harry. As Dina mentioned previously, I'm one of the Kickstart crew members that have joined on through the Kickstart scheme, and I've been working with Think. And well, the main project that I've been working on so far is, well, when I joined Dale, Dina had some plans in mind that have been developed for a walk around Corville, and I kind of picked up on that. And well, we planned out a route together, and that's something that I've plotted on a program, or well, it's a free online website that anyone can use, really, called MapHub. And so I've tracked where the route of the walk that I've gone across a few times myself, and I've traced that basically onto MapHub and put some markers on it. So you can see there's two different versions of the map. One is a lot simpler than the other because the intention was there'd be a printed version that's going to be put on things like leaflets that's going to be given out so people can get aware. But also, if people want to look at it online, they can actually, well, they will eventually be able to go onto this MapHub map themselves and take a look directly at it. So while I don't want to talk too much about the technical stuff because that's David and Drew's specialty, and so they have much more to say about it than I do, I just wanted to say that, yeah, I've been learning about mapping. It's come quite easily. It's not that complicated really, but there's a lot of potential for it. So I just wanted to say, like, what I've used it for so far and what I think it can be used for. So I'm using it for the walk, obviously, but the way that works is it's what that's actually doing is it's creating something to bring people together in Colville, to get people out more, to improve well-being, something that's quite important now coming out of the coronavirus lockdown. People are going out more with their friends and family when they can. But also, this walk has a lot of key features of Colville in it, so it can do quite a lot for the community. So I think Dina mentioned it goes past the new leisure centre, but it also goes past the old leisure centre, which is still in business, so it could get people more interested in that. It goes through Snibston Colliery and past the Century Theatre, which are just a little bit out of the way in Colville, and it's a terrible shame because there's a lovely park there that's, well, I think it was only around December that it really got finished. So there's a lot there. So the idea of this walk is it introduces people to what's in Colville that they maybe don't know about, or maybe they already do know about, but they don't really appreciate. So it's mapping here has been used to get people more engaged in the community, more engaged in these businesses that they go past, and also just like the general nature of the walk. And then also I did want to say, obviously this is a pretty self-explanatory way to use the walk, because or to use mapping to make a walk, because it's kind of one of the first things you think of when you think of mapping is a route to follow. But another thing that's one of my projects with Kickstart is Dina did mention doing some surveys around the local area in the earlier talk. I don't know if that really, she kind of glossed over it because it's not really a major thing. But yeah, one of the things I'm going to be doing is there was a survey about Whittick, local near Colville. And it mentioned stuff like, what are your favorite places in Colville? What are some abandoned places in Colville that could be used by the community and spruced up? So what I'm doing is I'm going to be presenting that. So my first idea was, okay, I'll tally up the survey results, make photographs, whatever. But because it's based on locations, I can use mapping to present this. So I can say, okay, here's a map with all the people's favorite locations on. Here's a map with all the places that people are worrying about that being underused. And then you can look at that map, and it's not only is it just a more engaging way to look at the information, you can learn a lot from it. Say, okay, there's actually quite a lot of abandoned buildings or places that are being used in one area. Maybe there's a lot of places that people love in one area, but there's other areas that don't have as much love. So it's a really good way to visually present information to give people an easier understanding and just present the information better. So yeah, and that's, like I said, we've only been talking with David and Drew for like less than a month really, and I've already learned loads about mapping. It's really, there's so much potential there. So I'm really glad. I'm really happy to be working with David and Drew and this Kickstarter project in general. But yeah, I think there's a lot of potential with mapping that people don't really think about, other than, oh, here's a route to follow. So yeah, basically, there's a lot of potential. I'm kind of rambling on a bit, like I did last time I had to talk about this, but that's because I'm interested in it and I have a lot to say. So I'm just going to end it here because I'm just going to keep rambling if I don't.
That's fantastic, Harry. I think we've been just immensely, impressed by Harry and the other Kickstarters just diving in and doing stuff. And I think when you're talking about technology and maps and so forth, there's a little bit of distinction between people who say, well, I've got to read the manual, and I've got to go on a training course and so forth, and people who say, well, let's dive in and get started. Maybe you need both. And Harry mentioned favorite places. I can talk more about that later. We're doing some of that where I live, asking people what are their favorite places, where do they want to visit after pandemic, what are the changes that's happened to an area, and how do you link maps to stories. You could put bits of video in there, you could link to stuff that's in the local paper and so on. Right. A little bit about mapping I've been doing with Drew in Islington. On the left, some screenshots from a project we did with Octopus Network of community hubs, who over 3 years did a project supporting local community gardens on estates. And what they wanted to do as an evaluation report was, how did that process, one, to tell the story of what happened, but also to show how it built relationships. So we did a website, which if you've got time and it's useful, I can go back to, which did three things. One, I did some audio, video, and photo reports on the gardens. Secondly, we did a little locations map showing where they were. But thirdly, Drew did a network map showing how over 3 years the connections between the community gardens and the estates developed. And also Drew, following on from that, has been mapping the community networks and their role as food hubs. Do you want to pick up on that, Drew?
Yeah, you can see in the panel on the left, down at the bottom, there's a map there that shows nodes and connections. And what that actually shows is collaborations between various community groups and other organizations in the We Can Grow project. A major aspect of We Can Grow was to increase community connectivity. But the trouble is, in all sorts of projects, we don't have ways of measuring that. And what network mapping can do is actually provide you with metrics that tell you how connected a community is at the moment and how that changes in the future. So connectivity is a major part of what we're trying to show in network mapping. A network map, it consists of blobs, nodes, and connections. But the software we use can not only visualize that, as you can see on the right-hand panel, but it can also measure how central various nodes are to that network. And it can also show you how the major clusters of nodes form because of the way the network is connected. So you're starting to think strategically there about the kind of shape of community and how that might be improved. There may be clusters that don't really communicate with other clusters, don't share anything. A lot of the early maps we did were based on asset-based community development, where we tried to map the sharing of resources between organizations. So that's what we've been trying to do here. Okay, let's have a look at the next one. Yeah, this develops up the map that you saw on the right-hand panel there before, but what it does is it splits the map into into clusters. So, and each cluster then is given the name of the most central node in that cluster. So you can see that, for instance, St. Luke's Community Centre has a series of nodes that cluster around it. The Hilltop Community Centre has another. So it's a good way of trying to find out who's influential across what groups of people or organisations in a community. On the right-hand side, it lists the top 5 nodes in terms of just the number of connections they have, but also in terms of a measure called betweenness. And betweenness actually measures how central that node is and how easy it might be to spread information or to exert influence on the community network as a whole. Okay, next one, Dan.
Are we done on that, Drew?
Yep, I'm fine. Next one. Yeah, David talked about.
Drew?
Oh, hang on a minute, Drew.
Yep. Yeah, can do.
Can you just say which software were you using for that last one?
Well, this one is done in a piece of software called Graph Commons. Now, but the earlier map I showed you is done in a piece of software called Kumu. Kumu is really good for searching and for detailed work. Graph Commons is really good for presenting broad strategic aspects of the network. So we use them both. And just recently, with a piece of work the Len Kelly Trust has funded, I paid the developers of a survey software called SumMap to feed both those maps. So off the same online survey, you don't have to choose which map you want to use, you can use both. Huh?
And Drew, we could pick up later on more detail of that if people are interested. So thanks very much for raising the question. Yep. We weren't sure when doing this presentation how technical people were, how far they wanted to dig into it, but yeah, really happy to come back on that.
Yeah. Okay, have the next one, David. Yeah. Whoops. This is Slip'em. Slip'em is a representation of a fictitious place. Deb and I were running a lot of workshops where we were asking people to develop up a scenario within which they could start talking about connectivity and collaboration and that kind of stuff. But eventually we thought, we're doing this every time we hold a workshop like that. Why don't we invent a fictitious place that people can buy into, and then we can explore that. So the London Borough of Slip'em, which you may or may not have heard of, illustrates the connections between umpteen different organizations, community groups, key individuals operating in that area. We even have a group called Space Race who are looking at the reuse of derelict buildings. Very much akin to what Dina was talking about earlier on. And the whole point of this is to be able to explore that map and think about what new collaborations you might need to mount a particular campaign. There are several campaigns that are built into the model. One of which is the reuse of a leisure centre. So again, there are all sorts of crossovers between here. To animate the map, really, we use a series of personas. You can see the little cards showing various people down the left-hand corner. And basically, people take up roles and play their way through the map to try and achieve particular projects or campaigns or whatever. But we can also use Slip'em to train up people in doing network mapping, to learn about the concepts and to some extent to learn about the software. Okay, next one, David. This is a little starter map that we have prepared in Colville itself. This is based on a table that Dina gave us when we started looking at the project. And this has been prepared by using internet research mainly. We've got the basic organizations of Data's table, but then we researched the websites of those organizations. And most organizations on their website will give you a description, and they will also give you an indication of who they work with, who they share projects with, who funds them, that kind of stuff. And that means we can plot in a connection then based on what they say on their website. And that map that you're looking at just now has been based entirely on published internet information. The great thing about that is it's not subject to GDPR, because that information is already in the public domain, and it's what these organizations say about themselves. Normally, we would try and collect that information through survey, and right now, people are not responding to surveys. Whereas we might normally, before COVID, have had a response, an early response of between 60 and 80% to this kind of survey. That's now up to 20 or 30. So internet research is a good way of getting into this stuff when we're not getting a good response to survey. I should just say that we can add a time factor to each of the nodes and connections, and then we can animate the map. The software will allow us to jump from time period to time period and show only the connections and nodes present in that time period. And it's a great way of showing the development of a network over time. Okay, David?
Yeah, just to throw in one thing there, Drew, I think both on the geographic mapping and the network mapping, the process by which you do it can be extremely beneficial as well. On the one hand, you could just go away, do the research, produce the map and present it to people. But even with a quick map like this done from internet research, if you play that back to people who are on the map, that's a great starter talking point. You can ask people whether they think that's a fair representation, what sorts of collaborations are taking place and so on. So thinking about a participatory process to actually help build relationships, reveal assets and so forth is really important. So it's not just about the map, it's about the communication, it's about the people, it's about the engagement. I think that's fair to say, Drew, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the position we find ourselves with on Islington at the moment, because halfway through that project, you have the COVID lockdown. So this whole business about response to questionnaires reared its head then. So that's a hybrid map. It has a lot of information there that's been researched off the internet, and it has information we got from an earlier survey. But what we've now done is to go back to everybody on the map to say, tell us is this what you want to say about yourself? Because each of the nodes contains information about that organization. Can we move on to the next slide, David? I'll show you what I mean by that. Every node has a card which gives basic information about the organization. In this case, we also post telephone numbers and email addresses. On the right-hand side, under it says reference at the bottom, you click on that, that will take you to the website of that particular organization. And the organizations listed above that, the pink dots, etc., if you click on those, you'll get taken directly to the card that represents that organization. So it allows you to explore the linkages between organizations. On those linkages themselves in the software, we can include information about why they connect as well. So really what a network map is a vast set of stories about why people collaborate, why they, why they share information and other sorts of things.
Okay.
I think that's the end of the presentation.
That's the end of the presentation. So I'll drop out of that. And let's have some questions, some discussion. We've got some other slides, Drew, haven't we, which we did the other day, which have got more detail about network mapping, for example. So if we can pick up from people, what's interesting in that? What's possibly useful to you?
Yeah, I've probably got loads of questions, but at the moment I'm setting up a new website, and we decided a few months ago that one of the things we wanted is a map of our community. We're an Empowering Places funded place under Power to Change. Manningham in Bradford is our community. And what we want to do is all the groups that we're working with, we want to have them on that map. So people, when they come onto our website, they see all our partners, they can click and see the information about those partners. We want our partners to be able to go in and, like you described, change their information whenever they want to, so that it's not all down to us. And also, when we're not funded, the website can continue either on a voluntary basis or in a different form. So we do have some resource, we've got some money. So having an idea of how much things cost is really important to us. So your process of using those 3 pieces of software to create your map, I'm really interested in that. Because also, at the same time, I've heard that a local business that does lots of corporate social responsibility, so works a lot with the community, they're actually community architects setting up a tech firm, Yemi Tech. They are intending to launch in our area a really sophisticated map that not only can you click and see all the community organisations, but you can also see all the statistics for your area, that you can see all the indices, that you can see all the leisure activities, all the private businesses, whatever it is you want. And I'm trying to decide how much to invest in our map for our community, because that's going to have community ownership.
Yep.
And how much I should be sort of maybe saying to them, oh, you know, come and talk to us because we want a bit of that. Knowing that that they will ultimately want paying for access by community organisations, maybe not individuals.
I think
Is that
it
too
would
much? But
no, I think it would be good to do a little bit of front-end scoping out of this. Just as we said at the beginning, it's horses for courses. Different kinds of maps do different kinds of things. And I think we would both resist. Drew's doing more network mapping, I'm doing more geographic mapping, storytelling. It's a bit tempting for us to say, well, what you need is a this, that, and the other, and so forth. But I think what would be great would be for you to do a little bit of hands-on exploration of the maps that we're talking about, and look at other ones and so forth. And you then might decide to go in with the architect's firm or whatever, because you might find that actually developing and maintaining your own set of maps is too challenging. But we could look at what other people are doing around the country. It's quite an interesting project in Merseyside, developing a green map of organisations there. So a little bit of exploration on your part. Drew, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I think you were veering towards asking how much this stuff costs, because I mean,
in a way, because it's not just setting it up, is it? It's the resource someone else was put in there, the resource to keep it going and keep it up to date.
Yeah, absolutely. The software costs are dependent on whether you want to create a private map or a public map. If you create a public map, it's free. That's in both Kumu and in Graph Commons. Right? Not for some app you will charge. They will charge you so much per month for the use of their software. In a project we're doing in London at the moment, where we're using all 3 methods, we're probably paying between £500 and £600 per year for the use of these 3 bits of software.
As you say,
these are private maps. Right, so, and we have hundreds and hundreds of nodes on those maps. So, the further point is that you talked about having a website where people can see all this stuff. All of these outputs can be embedded in the website, so people can actually play around with them on the website. and you can hide various sorts of information you may not want to share publicly on the website. But the great aspect of that is that people can play around with it, but you can't damage it. They can't screw your map up on the website. So
Somebody else had a hand up there.
yeah, geographic maps as well. Yeah.
Who was that? Was that Sally? Or yeah, hi.
Yeah, I just feel like I should say that we're doing quite a similar process as well here. So Sam, who's also on the call, I'm sorry, I'm Sally from Onion Collective in Watch It. And we've been working with Sam and her organisation, it's called Free Ice Cream, to do something really similar as well. So we've been creating kind of playable network maps. And we've worked with a few places to kind of map the social capital in places already. So yeah, just that we're doing a similar thing at the moment.
I'd be very interested to hear about that, actually.
Really good
yeah, it'd be lovely to talk about it.
Could I just say one thing? If people are interested in this side of things, the Encourage Change Foundation are paying me to set up a community of practice and exploration around network mapping. So that all you people out there that are playing with this stuff can actually start to support each other and exchange experiences, etc.
Yeah.
So if anybody here is interested in that, I'll put you on the list.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, that ties in with thinking I've been doing in the work that we're doing in London and with Colville. Or maybe one kind of little map labs, a group of people who are prepared to explore around this. So Sonia, you wanted to come in there? Yeah. Oh, hello. Or is it Dawn? Sorry.
Yeah.
Hello, folks. Yeah. I'll be quick in case Sonia does. Hello from Hackney, first of all. This is great, and I like this idea of having a small group of people to explore the different functions of maps and get behind it, because you're listening to your expertise is great. I've just been funded to survey Hackney gardeners, and that inevitably, and because I'm a gardener, and I know that tons and tons of new people have come into the gardening world, and urban greening and gardening is going to be more and more important as we go forward. And so I think it's inevitably going to lead to identifying land pockets and grot spots and connecting gardeners up with the aforementioned. So yeah, I'd love to be in the mapping group.
Well, that sounds. Okay. I'll drop my. I'll drop my email in, and Drew can add his. Great to do something in Hackney. Could share some experience on the gardening front with the Islington Octopus network. And as I say, that was really interesting because we did a mixture of going around and doing some interviews on the spot with the gardeners, bits of video, photos that they collected in the past, put those together in a simple website, and then do a locations map, but also do a network map. So I wouldn't say we've got a solution off the shelf, but it might be something that would spark some ideas with you. So I'd love to chat about that if useful.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I just want to come back 1 second. What we're particularly interested in doing is forming a collective. So whether people are growing on a windowsill, in their own little, pocket handkerchief backyard, or in a community setting, or like me, a jobbing gardener, because the network that connects all of the above doesn't actually exist. They're usually in silos. So that's the aim, really.
Okay, I've just dropped in a link to the Islington project there. Yeah, Sonia, I was saying I just dropped in the link to the Islington project there. It was a very, very modest budget, but it will show you, a few ideas. Anyone else? So it sounds like there's interest in a possibly interest in a mapping group, and we could check in with Dina and the practical governance team on that, and see how we could move it forward.
Yep.
I think we've probably got about 5 minutes before we all go back. But any other questions? I mean, just some hands up on who might be interested in a group. Yeah, 1, 2. Whoa, great. Well, 6 or 8 people there or whatever, and that would be fabulous. I was going to say, when Drew was talking about the difficulty of getting surveys done, one of the positive things we can grab out of the pandemic is we're all more comfortable with doing these kinds of events. So, you know, a year or so back, if you said we'd be, you know, running this kind of stuff, it would quite a lot of people would find it difficult. But there are also other online systems. There's quite a nice one that I came across the other day. I think it's called wonder.me. It's used by, is anybody involved in transition towns or losing control networks? They had a summit recently, and they had a great website, but they also, rather than, well, they were using Zoom, but they also used another system, and I've just dropped that into the chat, called Wonder.me. And when you go on there, and it's there's little bubbles with different labels on them, and one might be about gardening and another one might be about finance or mapping or something or whatever, and you can just wander around between the different places and drop into a room. So it's a bit like if you've been to open space events where you know, a face-to-face event kicks off with somebody doing, half a dozen people doing a pitch, come and talk about this, that or the other. Great for an open space activity where you can just choose which room you want to go and have a chat in, and you know, if you lose interest in that, you can just move off to another room. Any other little positive bits that we've got out of the last year?
Could I maybe just add one thing, that the maps, the network maps that I've shown to you, I have an assistant that helps me with those, and she built probably most of the Islington map, you know, the basic structure for that. That's my 15-year-old granddaughter. So that's how easy it is to use the stuff. Right? It's once you get into it, it's not difficult. But it's like the first time you saw a spreadsheet, you know, oh God, what's this about? Huh? But gradually you learn how to read and to manipulate a spreadsheet, and it's exactly the same with the network map. Huh? I have to add, by the way, I did pay her. I'm not exploiting my granddaughter.
So anybody using video and audio for storytelling that might link to maps? No? Oh, well, that's another fun activity, because I think you could very
easily, I think the video is really useful because both David and I, on both geographic and network maps, if you can drop a video into a node or a place, and somebody can just tell you about themselves. In Croydon, some time ago, we got the community connectors down there to put in just a short video clip into their node. So when you clicked on that, they would tell you what you do. Hi, I'm Yasmin. I'm a community connector for such and such an area. So what difference that makes, having the stuff actually talking to you.
One other angle, which Harry, well, no, Dina actually at the beginning talked about a really good online presentation about the history of Colville. And mapping is fantastic for history. One of the things I'm aiming to do where I live is a map showing, you know, the past, the present, the future. Unfortunately, in London, there is a system which allows you to have different sorts of layers of maps from different times in history. And Sally, did you want to throw something in on that?
Oh, just that. So we did a cultural project a while ago. We have a paper mill here that closed down, and when it closed down, we did a big archiving project. And at the same time, we so as part of this, we had a filmmaker go and film the whole site, and then create a kind of create a virtual tour with pins in it. And we had, you know, you could land on a pin, and it would be a piece of spoken work or a piece of artwork. And so there was all of this kind of like creative work interspersed in amongst it. So it was yeah, just following on from your point about adding videos, etc. It was
well, that sparks up the fact that my my sister Sally lives in Bristol, and my grandfather Herbert Postlethwaite was a very well-known photographer, amateur enthusiastic photographer, and back in the 1930s he was doing color photography and cine, and there is a Bristol map which has got some of his photographs on there. So it would be you know, fabulous if you drop me your email. It would be fabulous to connect there. You might get a volunteer from Sally if you if you're still interested in that kind of stuff. So yeah, past, present, future maps. That's really terrific. And the other angle we haven't really talked about is the ability for people to add their own content easily to maps. And got a discussion this afternoon with a bunch of people with a platform that allows you to do that very easily. Well, as we close, thanks so much for all of the interest here. It's a real buzz to us.
Thank you.
Cheers.